And while Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are injecting this much-needed dose of joy into the race, the disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, found liable for sexual abuse and criminally convicted of 34 felony counts ex-president and his number 2 are offering something that is not that. While Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are lighting up battleground states with Beyonce playing and mega crowds in attendance, Donald Trump is hunkered down at Mar-a-Lago, off the campaign trail until Friday, reverting to his old tricks, hurling incoherent slurs and pileups of insults. Stuff like this, quote, Mr. Trump, in a phone call this morning to Fox and Friends, described Ms. Harris as a nasty person and her and Mr. Walz as communists. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised that Donald Trump's muscle memory is kicking in and he's reverting to his greatest hits of misogyny and divisiveness. Because in the past 24 hours, with the addition of Tim Walz to the Democratic ticket, the Earth 1, Earth 2 split screen of the choice now facing Americans is impossible to ignore. As veteran Democratic strategist, now an advisor to the Harris-Walz campaign, David Plouffe, put it this morning on Morning Joe.
Tim Walz is normal, mainstream, and happy. And J.D. Vance is weird, extreme, and angry. And I really do think, listen, policy matters a great amount. What you're going to do for the country from an issue standpoint matters a great amount. But also that visual presentation, I think, of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, as they love America. They love people. They know our better days are ahead and we can tackle these challenges. And these other 2 folks in Trump and Vance are the angriest ticket in American political history.
The angriest ticket in American political history. It's an incredible branding effort, and some would argue it is also the lowest energy ticket in modern history. Good luck beating this turbocharged, joyful, and refreshingly normal opponent with what you're offering. It's where we start today with Battleground States Director for the Harris-Walz campaign, Dan Cannon. Thank you so much for being here. I know a little bit from my time on campaigns that you have one of the busiest jobs, so we appreciate you taking time out to do this. I know it's usually delegated to the comm staff, so it's great to get to talk to you. Tell me the plan. It feels like right now you have not pent-up energy, you have sort of right out of the chute all this energy, you have all these people, you have more people than it seems like you have tickets for these events. How do you sustain that? How do you deploy your 2 very popular candidates?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the thing that I've been talking about this campaign since the beginning, Nicolle, is that we're going to have 7 very close states, more states we compete in certainly, but 7 that are just true toss-ups in this election. And we've been building campaigns and an infrastructure in those states from the beginning, designed to win a close race, designed to mobilize voters, to have offices, to have a presence in community, to engage people. And that infrastructure has been built. And so when the vice president was endorsed by the president a couple weeks ago, we already had that coming weekend 2,300 events planned in battleground states. And so when that incredible enthusiasm came over and it was huge and palpable and real, it had a place for it to go. It wasn't just a fire with newspaper. It was a fire built with some real sturdy logs to keep the flame going. And that's what we have to do, is find a place for folks to come in, to continue to engage them, to have them bring in their own friends and neighbors and other volunteers, and to create voter contact opportunities and make this a community event, something that they are a part of. That was what we did in Obama in the 08 campaign, the 12 campaign, and I think we're replicating that to a great degree right now with this campaign.
I want to talk to you about Pennsylvania, because I feel like something that people get wrong in the analysis, even the most generous analysis of the addition of Governor Wallace to the ticket, is that you would have just stationed Josh Shapiro in his home state if he'd been tapped. He, too, would have been barnstorming the country. And I wonder if you could sort of articulate how someone in your job deploys your candidate and your vice president. I mean, my understanding, and I haven't done this for 20 years, but it's like the county you go into, how many people you need to reach, how many people you need to motivate, how many people you need to persuade, how many people you need to convert. Just talk about how targeted this effort will be, not just in Pennsylvania, but across those 7 states.
Sure. I mean, I'll look at Wisconsin right here. So we're in the Blue Wall today. You're in Eau Claire, a town of 71,000 people in a Republican congressional district. Western Wisconsin, it's more rural than urban, obviously. But 12,000 people are out there today to watch Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have that positive vision that David Plouffe mentioned. And it really is a joyful campaign that does get tough and have contrast where we need to and establish the stakes. But you can run a political campaign that does find joy and connection with people. But it is to your point, Nicolle, it has to be targeted. We have to go to the states that we know are on the pathway to 270. Obviously, Michigan and Wisconsin, and of course, Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, very important, but also Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona and Nevada. And within all those states, there are different issues that matter locally. And the teams we built on the ground, more than 260 offices in all those states, more than 1,400 staff in all those states. There's the principal travel that you're seeing right now, which is obviously where a lot of the spotlight goes. But with all those events I mentioned earlier, with surrogates, with local validators, with just neighbors and volunteers doing voter contact, you have a presence everywhere you need to, and you can establish messages and community events that are focused and authentic to the kind of conversation happening in those communities.
The youth vote was, for my old party, sort of a mirage. It's a really real thing for your party. So the plan of exciting them and motivating it is probably 40%, and then turning them out to vote, making sure if they're going off to college, they're registered and they're able to do that, probably the other 60%. And correct me if I have any of that wrong. But this seems like explosive, really almost historic. I'm sure you're looking back at 08 for the right comparisons of excitement in a part of the vote that you can't manufacture. I mean, the youth vote is either there for you or it's really, really hard. And it's clearly there for Vice President Harris and for Governor Walz. Tell me the plan and tell me how much attention and focus is on turning them out as voters.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great youth program here that we run on the campaign that engages folks and has throughout the campaign. But as we head into the fall, as you mentioned, Nicolle, with the college campuses coming back online, it's another great opportunity to have a shot in the arm. But the thing I'll say about young voters, and young voters are not just college kids, they're voters under 30, right, who maybe are starting a family or trying to start a family or worried about some of the key issues that are just like the issues the rest of America faces. They do care about issues. They care about climate change. They care about cost. They care about, having safe communities. They care about gun violence prevention. They care about the things that this campaign believes in and talks about all the time. And to David Plouffe's point, they don't want a campaign that is denigrating America itself, denigrating the people in America, and being mean. They want a campaign they can feel a part of something. And I think we've created that with this ticket and with the momentum you're seeing. But with that youth vote and with all the other coalitions we're trying to keep together, we need all of that, because despite the enthusiasm, and it's wonderful, it's great, it's palpable, the races are still going to be very, very close. There's some political gravity in this country that we have to recognize. And so all of this, to me, is additive to our path to victory, but doesn't predict the path to victory. We have to do the hard work and continue to mobilize folks to win these tight races across all the battlegrounds.
I heard Vice President Harris describe herself as the underdog. I know that's always music to the ears of folks in your job. You have to always run as an underdog if the polls shift, even more so that people aren't complacent. What are sort of the three things that keep you up at night for the next 90 days?
Well, I think we have to keep growing and scaling as we have to give people a place to activate that enthusiasm, energy in this campaign and talk to folks. We know the Trump campaign will try some things. We know what they did in 2020 by refusing to accept the result of the election. We know that they will have an effort to make it harder for folks to vote. We have a very big and strong voter protection team that thinks all the time about those barriers that will get put up in front of people to deny them an opportunity to participate in this democracy. So we're prepared for that. But I think, truthfully, the biggest challenge is going to be to harness all of this and turn it into something that is targeted to the voters we need to win, to keep people focused, and to recognize that the election is going to be difficult and tough, and that we're having a wonderful moment now, but we know it's going to be a difficult slog throughout. That's just how elections in America are today. But I think we've got the team that is very battle-tested. We've been battle-tested all winter, spring, summer, and heading into the fall. And I think with the plan and with the enthusiasm and with the ticket that can really resonate with America, we feel very strong about our chances.
Are you liking this contrast that is setting up really seemingly organically? I think at one of Vice President Harris's first events, it was a crowd that started chanting back at her, "We're not going back, not going back." I mean, every campaign grabs for the future, and your supporters seem to have grabbed for it with you. I mean, how much are you sort of reading your crowds and working that into the messaging?
You'd absolutely do that. And not just the crowds themselves, Nicolle, but every night we get a qualitative and a quantitative report on the millions of voter contacts we're having at the doors. So we know what people are talking about in a real community, not just the rallies, but where they're talking about the neighborhoods. And we know they care about lowering costs, and they like the efforts that we're engaging in. The vice president said herself in Atlanta that on day one, we're tackling big pharma, we're tackling corporate price gouging, right? We're tackling corporate rent hikes. Those are things folks want to hear about. They also hear about Project 2025, and it concerns them. They don't want to go back to a place where Donald Trump wants to take them, and that's, I think, where that "we're not going back" chant really comes from. It's partly organic at the doors as much as it is organic in these rallies. So we do take that stuff in. I think that qualitative and anecdotal feedback and what we see in these enthusiastic moments feeds into our thinking of how we can further connect with the voters.
How big of an issue for you is the fight for reproductive rights, and specifically Governor Wallace's position? I know everyone is now going to the archives and trying to figure out when they last saw the vice president and Governor Wallace together, and we had footage of the two of them at an abortion rights event in Minnesota shortly after Dobbs was overturned. How much is that issue interwoven into all of your outreach?
It's obviously a very big issue in our campaign and in America right now. And I think it's undeniable that in 2022 and in the off-year elections in 2023, and by the way, Nicolle, not just in blue states, but in Kentucky and Ohio and some of those Virginia legislative races this past fall, that issue propelled Democrats to the polls. It shifted independents and Republicans to vote for Democrats in those elections. It's an incredibly important issue that resonates certainly not just with women and not just with Democrats, but with Republican women, with independent men. And I think the way that Governor Wallace talks about this issue with a real personal and authentic story with his own daughter Hope and the challenges they had with IVF, he, I think, gives people another example of how this issue is broad and is not just about a narrow segment of the population, but really about both rights and freedoms, but healthcare more broadly. It resonates. It's been effective for him. I think it's obviously something the vice president has talked about with great effect on the campaign trail all year. And the two of them together, I think, make an even more compelling messaging duo on that front.
Dan, I appreciate your time. Keep coming back and keep us smart and honest and focused on the right things, as you know, where the race is really being waged. So an open invitation to join us.
Thank you, Nicolle.
Thanks. Joining our conversation, reporter for Notice, a new nonprofit Washington publication, Jasmine Wright, and distinguished political scholar and professor at Princeton University, our friend Eddie Glaude, is here. Jasmine, this is a campaign firing on all cylinders, and I say that as someone who has worked on campaigns that have fired on all cylinders and campaigns that have faltered on all cylinders. It isn't always like that, right? An outside event could change that at any moment. A challenging news cycle, right? It's not a foregone conclusion that this will always be the state of this campaign. But this is not, I keep saying this because I've tried, right? This cannot be manufactured. You don't go to a candidate lab and find someone like Tim Walz and trot him out. I mean, this is so far a very well executed campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing is an extended honeymoon far beyond maybe what people even inside the campaign expected to happen. This real lengthy, long-lasting momentum that's riding them at least somewhat close to the Democratic National Convention, where we know that they could even see